Hello, good afternoon. In today's edition here, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make your bike faster. Now, in order to make your bike faster, there are a couple of things which you need to consider first. Is the bicycle freely turning? Now let's go ahead and explore this one here. I'm going to find a place to hang my camera. Then I begin to tell you exactly what you need to know prior to making your bike faster. Every bicycle which you can actually talk about have this feature as long as it has the gears. Then it's gonna work pretty much with this same principle which I'm teaching you here. I said there are 3 steps, so I'm gonna begin with the easy one. The first thing you want to know about getting your bike to become faster is first the tires. Now, if you look at the inscription, let me turn this one a little bit. The tire. And let's go about it. And if we look at it here, there is a prescription which states that the tire should be inflated to 100 psi, right? So what happens when you inflate this very tire to 100 psi? I want to find it, so I'm going to show you, okay? Here we go. So let me go ahead and lower it down. Some have 100, some have less, but I've seen the one that are on hundreds. Okay, so if we see this tire right here, over here is reading inflate to 100 psi, which is equivalent to 68.5 kPa, which is also equivalent to 6.8 bars. Now, why did they actually ask you to inflate the tire to 100 psi? Because at 100 psi, hey guys, if we look at the tire here, the specification here is, if you read it, inflate to 100 psi, which is equivalent to 685 kPa or 6.8 bars. So what happens when you inflate it to 100 psi? You just have a very little contact patch when you are riding on the road, and at that, this will not create a resistance to your motion or your riding while you're riding the bicycle. So, however, this tire is actually already getting old and need a replacement. If, however, you decide to inflate this to 60 psi, there's going to be a lot of more contact patches on this very tire that is making contact with the road surface, and it will be creating a drag while you're riding your bicycle. This is a very much verifiable thing which you can do on your own at home. So go ahead and reduce deflate the tire to 60 or 50 psi, then try to ride a bicycle and see that it's going to be pulling a lot of strength from you. So in such situation, what is actually there is that you're pretty much going to be using it for exercise, because the exercise needs more of your energy in order to burn calories and all that. So you need to reduce the pressure if you are actually trying to exercise with your bicycle, and that is going to help your body start sweating faster. So now that's the first thing. Now the second thing which we need to take a look at here is there any resistance that is actually stopping the bicycle while it's moving? Which is the second factor. This can be bearing problem, this can be tire wheel misalignment. Okay, such as here, like if I turn this right now, you see it goes and stops, and you see it's stopping even when I'm not braking. So this brake is gonna be creating a resistance. You can see it right there. Let's do it again. You see it, it's holding it here. It's holding it here. So because one, the wheel is not completely straight, and second, this brake shoe is touching it right there. Now let's look at the other side. You can see it doesn't even give any gap here. It's not about the brake adjustment. The brake adjustment is okay, but this wheel is not straight. Now let's look at the opposite direction. And I'll sit the camera where you can see it exactly. So you look at here and you see there is a whole clearance there in that side, and it's not touching the brake shoe, the shoe brake, you see. So this is also going to be reducing the amount of effort which you are using to ride the bicycle while you are either trying to race with your friends or you're trying to speed up faster. So you need to address this by straightening the wheel. Now there is another second call to concern. So let me adjust this a little bit to this position here where it's not going to touch it. Now we're going to do a bearing testing right now. That bearing testing is actually going to be coming from testing the bearings inside here. There are bearings here and there are bearings on the side. So we're going to be testing it, and how to test it is just this very method which I'm about to do right now. So let me get the camera to cover exactly what we want to do. So let's go ahead and turn this bike right now. You see it's not touching any longer, all right, but it's stopping. Why is it stopping? Why is it stopping? It should be rolling freely. Now if you don't understand what it means, I just give it only little effort. Now let me shift the camera back. Let's experiment further. Just a little, and it stops. It didn't even roll for quite much time, longer time, and it stops. So what is actually there in that situation is that the bearings here, it might have been very bad. There is a bearing and there is cone there, or it is too tightened. I'm not talking about this tight. The tight between here and here is pretty much okay, all right, because that is the alignment of the bicycle, the alignment. So the tightening between here and here is okay, but where it gets more sensitive to controlling this very wheel, how freely it turns, is how adjusted this very inner part here is adjusted to be able to hold the bearing in place. So if it is too tight, then it creates a problem. I hope you guys are understood. And if it is too loose, it's gonna make the wheel to wobble. So here we're gonna see if the wheels is having some lapses, and the simple test to that is wiggling it. You can see it's not wiggling. There is no any clearance at all. There is no any clearance. So when you finish tightening this very place here, when you finish adjusting this very inner knot here, you need to give it a little bit of minus so you can have just a little clearance. After when you have that clearance right there, I'm not talking about this one, I'm talking about this one here. When you give it that little minus after the full tight, right? If you tighten it too much, you destroy the bearing and the cone. So after you might have tightened it and it is a little bit strong, then you give it just a little bit minus to have just a minimal clearance. When it has that minimal clearance, it's going to roll for a long time. Now let's test the front one and see if the front one is behaving like the rear one that we're seeing right here. And guys, just a moment. Okay, here we are on the front one, on the front tires. So let me go ahead and lift it up and let's spin it. You can see it. You can see it. So it's very, very much free compared to the rear wheels. Can you see it? Now let me give you more shot. Even despite the fact it's having a little contact here, but it's still very much free. That is how you expect the rear tire to be. So let me go over here and let's point the camera here so that you see exactly how it's reacting. Okay, this is good. This is a good view. Okay, over here you can see how the brake shoe here is giving a gap and here is making a contact. That shouldn't happen. All right, that shouldn't happen. So, but let me test it again by lifting here up and just, you can see it. It hasn't stopped. So even if you leave it, it's gonna roll like this for like a minute. So what that tells you is that the bearing within the hub is having just the right clearance, which I discussed about. So that's to say that this very front hub here, the clearance which I talked about, is having that clearance. As I'm touching like right now, it's having just a very little clearance. If it doesn't have that clearance, it's not gonna speed very much better as it's supposed to. So in the normal situation, I'm actually supposed to lose the rear one and make that minus that I've told you guys that you need to make, and that minus has to be on this side. The minus has to be here, so this one has that clearance. Now if I go ahead to touch it right now to wiggle it, you're gonna see that it has some bit of clearance on it, which I spoke about on the rear wheel, which is here. It's just a very little clearance, just little. Now the last way to make your bike faster, if these other two guys has been well certified, is the gear system, the gear ratio. Now in the gear ratio, you have to understand this. Like you see my bike right now, you want to count this very sprocket. You want to count it. I don't know how many that is here, but the number on this bigger sprocket, the faster the bike is gonna be on one condition, right? If I decide to take this chain right now into the second side there, all right? If I decide, just want to do it with hands. Now it's hard because I need to adjust this thing here. So let me take it back to how it was. Now if I get it down to that side there, I have actually changed the gear ratio, and that gear ratio is what's going to affect the speed. So if you're looking for a faster bike or you want to upgrade it, you want to find a one that has 3 of this sprocket. The more the number, if it has 3, then it's going to give you more flexibility when climbing up the hill and will not stress your laps. All right, now let's go over to explain to you the relationship between this one here and the rear one. I'm going to explain it just a little bit moment. Now I talked about the number of this one here to be higher, so the higher this number is, then the lower this last one here is gonna be. That is how it is. The greater the bigger one, the smaller one. The greater the bigger sprocket, then the smaller cassette should be. And my own, the one I have here, this smaller one, so when you shift it to this last one here, and when you shift it to the smallest last one here, which is this chain, all right, then the next chain also should be on the higher sprocket. That is how it should be. Then your bike is going to become faster, and that is also going to be dependent on how many teeth this is very down freewheel is here, or this cassette is. I'm not talking about the numbers here, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3. So for this very small, this one here, mine is 14. There are some that are 10. The smaller the number, the faster the bicycle is gonna be. So long as, all right, you change the gear to the bigger sprocket. So keep the bigger sprocket, the bigger chains, the chains on this bigger sprocket, while allowing on the back one here to be on the smallest one. So that is pretty much it. The bike is going to be very fast in that. as soon as you make that change. So if your own bike has anything above 14, 15, well, then definitely it means this other one has to be bigger in number. I haven't took my time to count this one, but let me go ahead and count it and tell you exactly what it is so you compare. Okay guys, I finished counting it. So this gear ratio on the higher one here on mine is 52 tooths, while the ratio of the smaller one here is 14. So it's 14 to 52. So if you're looking for a faster bike, you want to go 8. If you can find 8 or 10 on here, that is fine. Then you want to look for 70 tooths on this side. All right, so that is means the smaller this one is, then the higher this number is. And I guarantee you, after that, after getting it all set up, after making that upgrade, your bike is gonna be faster. Okay guys, I'll see you guys later. Tune in for the next episode on how the gear works if you are a beginner, because it's the beginner who's gonna be trying to figure out how the gear works.